Wolf Sanctuary of PA is a small nonprofit rescue for gray wolves and wolf dogs in Lititz, Pennsylvania. We've been here since 1980, and our primary focus is on providing health and well-being throughout their lifetime for the rescues that come into our care. And our secondary mission is education. So we want to teach the public through guided tours that wolves aren't fairy tale monsters. They're very important to the environment, and teach them about their unique culture and characteristics.
The Wolf Sanctuary of Pennsylvania is located here on 80 acres of ground just north of the town of Lititz. So why do wolves need a sanctuary anyway? Well, it starts with the fact that wolves have been plagued by myth and misinformation for centuries. One of the unfortunate results has been people keeping wolves as pets.
So most of our rescues actually come from people trying to have them as pets in household settings. It is illegal in Pennsylvania, but some states it is legal, and we still get rescue requests, often from people who may acquire an animal as a puppy and then they start to get older. And wolves and wolf dogs have a different level of care that they require. They have just different instincts that they rely on. It's kind of baked into them to be able to survive in the wild, and those instincts really don't jive well in a household setting. Honestly, the biggest issue, going back to the fact that they're social animals, is separation anxiety. People don't always realize when they come into a home, that animal becomes part of the pack, and they are so closely bonded with their pack, they don't understand any level of separation, whether it be work schedules, vacation, errands. So any level can cause intense anxiety, cause them to destroy the house or even escape. Little Red Riding Hood, a lot of Disney films. Wolf ends up to be the villain, and it's unfortunate because, again, as I've mentioned, they're often very shy of humans. They're gonna run away from people, so they're not chasing down your protagonist in the story. That's not what they do. But a lot of those myths tend to drive fear in people, and fear makes them act. And then you have areas where wolves, are reintroduced, and then you have cattle ranchers who have a lot of fear that their livelihood and their livestock are threatened by wolves. And they often, because of that fear, tend to over-exaggerate the threat that wolves actually might pose. And rather than taking non-lethal predator control methods like things like fladry, which is flapping, noisy ribbons, actually keep wolves away, or range riders, hiring people to ride around the perimeter of the cattle to prevent wolves, kind of just an aversion thing. Rather than taking those non-lethal aversion methods, wolves' lives are threatened in the wild.
So sometimes people unwittingly bring a wolf dog into their home, and then it's eventually identified. And how is that done anyway?
DNA testing, there's a variety of places that do DNA testing. If an animal is in question, we might do DNA testing as well. So that's really looking at, a blood test or a, cheek swab or something that you send off to a lab. We also do something called phenotyping, where we look at the physical and behavioral characteristics, because there are certain characteristics of wolves and wolf dogs that a dog really wouldn't have. So if we're looking at, we observe enough of those features.
Like for instance?
So for instance, the way a wolf stands is quite different than a dog. So their paws kind of turn outward when they stand. They have a different gait when they run. They're tall and lanky. They have a longer snout, typically. Their ears are wide and densely packed with fur. So a wolf dog is actually an animal whose recent ancestor was a wolf and a recent ancestor was a dog. Recent ancestor being parent, maybe grandparent, maybe one generation beyond that. They can have characteristics of both dogs and wolves, which can actually make them very confused. So while wolves instinctively fear people, dogs instinctively
Sounds like
don't.
an identity crisis in an animal.
A bit of an identity crisis. And that can be very complicated in a household because they're relying on different conflicting instincts, which makes it really confusing to try to care for them and train them and things like that. As far as animals in our enclosures, it's all personality. We have some wolves and wolves together, we have wolves and wolf dogs together.
Let's talk more about wolf dogs, because after all, they make up about half the population here. So how do they come into being anyway? Is it careless breeding practices? Does it happen spontaneously in the wild? Tell us.
So it's typically not often happening in the wild. Wolves are going to find their the strongest, most compatible mate that they can find, and often that's going to be another wolf, not a domestic dog, that they can find in the wild. Now, in areas where wolf populations have declined, or areas where they're trying to have the population grow again, like red wolves in North Carolina, there can be instances where they will interbreed with wild, like local dogs, feral dogs in the area, and that kind of is detrimental to their recovery, because if they're interbreeding, then it's not a true genetic population. It's not a valid genetic population.
When you look in one of your enclosures and you happen to see two wolves that might be behaving in a peculiar way, maybe in a way that's not good for the other one, what are the cues you're looking for that tell you that maybe we should separate these wolves? Because after all, the social behavior, the relationship is important.
One of the key ways that wolves communicate is body language. So we need to be learning their body language to understand what they're saying to each other. So a tail tucked can be a very submissive behavior, and that can be positive if they're kind of kissing up to their pack mate and it's kind of a mutual respect thing. But if the tail is tucked and there's other behaviors, like maybe they're showing their teeth a lot, running away, chasing each other away from their food, or getting into minor conflicts over food a lot, then we might make a decision to separate a pack. When we have visitors, we are required to have 2 sets of fencing that separates the wolves from the visitors. This is Maka. She lives with her pack mate Akila. They're both about 8 years old now. They were rescues that were introduced here when they were about 4 years old. Wolves do wag their tails. One of the interesting things that I've noticed here over the years, the packs that are more social with people will wag their tails when people are around, when they're looking at them, whereas the packs that are less social with people, meaning more shy and fearful and keeping to themselves, they still wag their tails, but they're almost always looking at each other when they're wagging their tails rather than looking at the people. So it just kind of shows their, again, that relationship and their communication. They're wagging their tail to communicate something. She's wagging her tail to communicate that she's actually quite comfortable with our presence at the moment.
When these wolves do play together, Michelle, what does it look like when they do that? Does it look like dogs nipping at each other, bounding at each other?
Yeah, pretty much all of the above. I would say when wolves and wolf dogs play, they're practicing for the hunt. So there's a lot of chewing on necks and faces, and maybe even grabbing a hind leg. In a larger pack, sometimes they might even, pick one to be the one that's hunted, and then they might all chase them around, and then they might take turns in that different role.
Well, that's interesting. They take on a role. I'm amazed.
They will take on a role just like that, because in the wild, all the time they're practicing for the hunt. They're hunting these big prey animals, so they really need all the skills necessary to be able to take them down. So wolves communicate in a variety of ways, and one of the big ones is vocalization. The wolves howl to communicate, so they're howling to strengthen pack bonds. They might howl to rally the pack together when they succeed at hunting to come to dinner. They might howl to each other to call and response if they're traveling at a distance. They might also howl in mourning if they lose a pack mate.
I had no idea the howl could have so many interpretations and so many functions.
Widely varied. But the myth of howling at the full moon comes from the fact that they only succeed at hunting about 10 to 20% of the time because they're taking down these large prey. So when it's light, under the light of the full moon, they're hunting at dawn and dusk, they're more likely to be able to see better and succeed at hunting, so they might be howling more often in the wild because they're actually coming to dinner more often under the light of the full moon. A little over a year ago, we introduced 2 packs together, 2 males, Blue and Goose, and 2 females, Izzy and Halona. And they were doing really well together, fully integrated into their own enclosure for several months, until one evening they had a conflict. They had an issue with each other. And so we ended up separating them, but we left them along a single fence, and it turned out they really got along really well still. So we've been testing it out, and we've been doing daytime play dates. So today is a special day because all 4 are actually able to play together. And then we found that they're harmonious as long as we separate them in the evening.
Now, it's interesting you talk about having play dates for wolves, and people usually don't connect the word play dates with wolves, but I mean, since they like social interaction, and sometimes you have to contrive it, don't you?
Exactly. Every pack here is different. Everybody's got their own personality. Both the individuals have personalities, and the packs have their own unique personalities, and so we try to accommodate that as best we can. So being that we are a sanctuary, and while we provide ample space in their environment, it is a captive setting, so there are limitations to the edge of their area. So rather than just providing the bare minimum of their basic needs, we want to enrich their lives. So enrichment is a term that indicates that we introduce something for mental and physical stimulation. So that could be at a zoo, might be like large zoo toys, which we have tried before in the past. Some of the enclosures have them, really durable toys. But wolves are so, they have such strong jaw pressure and they're so intelligent and strong that sometimes the best toys are the natural ones that they're able to consume, and it's quite all right. So one of the things we do is in the fall, right around now, we'll carve pumpkins and we hide treats in them, and we distribute them. And what's interesting now is some of the packs now have pumpkin patches left over from the previous year, so they're having their own pumpkins now. But that's just one way that we provide enrichment. As well as bones, there's natural bones and stuff. When they get their food, there's bones included, and that helps their metabolism, their digestion, and also they love to play with them.
So with all that jaw strength, they can take that pumpkin and really chomp into it.
Oh yeah, pumpkins, yeah, they can crush bones up pretty good, so pumpkins are no big deal for them. And these guys obviously get along great. That's the male goose in the middle. Now he's kissing up to Isabel. Now, there's
the
Helena.
nip on the snout.
That's totally playful, affectionate, loving behaviors. I can identify every wolf on the property.
What do you know? How much fun do you have working in a place like this? Because let's face it, it's a fairly unusual occupation, isn't it?
Yeah, so I will say it's hard work. We all work really hard, but we're all deeply passionate about what we do here. We have a really deep love and caring for every single one of the individuals. We get to know all their personalities and their unique quirks, and we develop strong bonds with them. Because while wolves are typically instinctively shy and fearful of people, once they do build those bonds, they can be very, very strong bonds that they build, the relationships that we create. So that's a really rewarding part of working here, getting to know all of them, seeing the relationships that they form with each other, and yeah, that's the part I really enjoy.
I'm glad you put it that way, getting to know the wolves, because I was looking at your website and I saw that there are it looks like pretty nice pictures of each of the resident wolves here. Plus they have names, and I think they wrote their own biographies too, I think.
They're very good writers.
Exactly. Kathy, you're a board member of the Lititz Springs Park, and the history of the park goes back some 200 years, so it's a lot of history behind it. Who gets the credit for making this park a reality?
The Moravian Church. The Moravians really were instrumental in developing the park. Really, prior to that, 7-acre swamp, and the men from the church filled in the swamp, filled in with dirt, and we are now the stewards of this park.
Well, how developed was the city of Lititz at that time? And again, this is going back hundreds of years.
Well, remember, Lititz was a closed community. That means the Moravian Church, no one that was not a member of the Moravian Church was allowed to live in this closed community. And that went on for many years, and then finally some churches broke out of the Moravian Church and developed their own small areas of living.
It's hard to imagine back in those days some people not being allowed to live here.
Yes.
I mean, that's a shock to
It is a shock,
people
yes.
in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Now, the park's been here so long, hundreds of years, so it's got to be a big responsibility to maintain a park like this. And it's had its good years and its bad years throughout its long history.
Correct. The park is maintained solely from funds from the public. We get no money from the government or those kind of things. We get donations, and that's how we maintain the park.
The first reported use of the Lititz Springs Park for entertainment was in 1778, when a local music teacher and his small orchestra gave concerts here in the evening. Sure, that sounds great to us today, but the music then was considered too worldly by the Moravian Church that had charge of the park. Now, a different reaction was expressed by soldiers that were convalescing from their wounds in the Revolutionary War. They enjoyed the music here very much.
July 4th, it used to be the church bells rang at 6 o'clock in the morning. Unfortunately, they don't do that anymore. But we have the park all decorated with red, white, and blue. And we have stringers, pieces of wood that go over the creek. And we light 7,000 candles when it starts to get dark on July 4th in the evening. There's a Ferris wheel that's been recreated that we light. There are stars that we light. Those things are all over the stream close to the head end. And we have beautiful wooden swans that we decorate, and we light those and we put those in the head end. We have a big Moravian star that we hang because, of course, you know, we have ties to the Moravian Church and those traditions. And then we have entertainment the entire day. There's a kids zone, there's a teen zone, we have entertainment on the stage, bands, all different kinds of things. Pie eating contests sometimes. It just depends on what our theme is for the year. And then around, right before the candles are lit, we have a pageant. It's called the Queen of Candles pageant. 12 girls are selected by their senior classmates, and they appear on the stage. Of course, they're announced and their biography is written and everything. They appear on the stage, and then one girl is crowned Queen of Candles. And she lights the first candle that illuminates the entire park. In 1978, my first daughter was born, and we live about a block south of the park. And we would come down here all the time. And as we came down, I realized what an important part of the community it was. And then I got involved with the Queen of Candles pageant and just kind of progressed from there.
So here we are at the head end of the park, and this memorial has been here a long time, and it was cut into the stone by a gentleman named Beck.
It was a lion's head to symbolize the Lion of Lucerne, carved in 1857. But it was defaced, and in 2006, we were able to get this granite sculpture to replace it.
I mean, obviously it's upsetting to find this sculpture in the condition it was in, and then right away people have to start talking about ideas to restore it or completely obliterate it. I'm sure all kinds of ideas came to the table.
And one idea that certainly recently, very recently, has come to the table is restoration of that particular piece. This little bridge is the scene of many activities and photo shoots. A lot of kids come here for their graduation photos. Queen of Candles has their picture taken here. I mean, it's a nice part of the park. When we have the July 4th program, the frames that hold the candles go from the head end way beyond this particular stone bridge.
That's got to be spectacular, and that's a lot of candles to light. How do you manage that?
7,000 candles, and we have a candle crew of volunteers of about 40 people who help us stick the candles in the frame, and then they come back a couple of hours later and they light all of them.
How long does it take to light 7,000 candles, I wonder? I think about things like that, Kathy.
It takes about 40 minutes to light.
Oh, that's
45
not bad.
minutes. No,
as long as you have enough volunteers.
Yes. Prior to a few years ago, someone would dress up like General Sutter and pan for gold in the creek.
Oh, why was that a relevant or significant thing to do here?
Because General Sutter's grave is in the Moravian Cemetery.
There you go.
But we don't do that
anymore. To an out-of-towner like me, that seemed like almost a random thing, you know?
Oh, okay. All right.
Kathy, tell us about this historic band shell.
This band shell and the seats in front of it are the scene of the Queen of Candles pageant for the July 4th celebration and the symphony that comes on Memorial Day. And people rent it for different activities.
This has got to be a real focal point in this park.
It is.
People are just drawn to a band shell, I think, in general.
Yeah, and there aren't very many band shells around anymore. So it's, we're very fortunate to have it.
This was put up in the 1930s. Have you maintained that general appearance over the years?
This is what it is, yes, we have. We had some of the stonework and the apron for the stage built out a little bit further. But other than that, it's the same.
And I have to ask you about the ducks. I mean, hundreds of ducks that live here. And it occurs to me that maybe they're descendants of ducks who lived here years or centuries ago. That's maybe a flight of fancy on my part.
I think it might be because people unfortunately turn loose their ducks that have been...
Is that so? Is that where a
Yes.
lot of them are coming from?
That's where some of them are coming from, and some of them are just, here. They've been here forever.
Can the duck population be a problem then? If people are indiscriminately adding on to it?
The problem is people would come down and they would dump pails of garbage for the ducks to eat, thinking ducks like lettuce and all those kind of things.
This is fairly recent, you're talking?
Yes.
That sounds like almost an outdated approach to
Yes.
dealing
Well,
with
now we
things.
have signage up that says exactly what we should and should not feed the ducks. The ducks really, in my opinion, kind of come and go.
And as far as recommendations are concerned, do any prove to be controversial with the public? Did anything ever come up in regard to the park that bothered the public and it had to be resolved? Maybe it's hard to make popular decisions all the time about the park.
It is very hard. We can't please everybody, and we've learned that from the get-go. If we raise the cost of the fireworks, then that's a problem. But people don't understand. We need the money to operate the park. Even the pumps that pump the water for the fountains, everything costs money. The electric costs us a lot of money, and we rely on people and their contributions.
Now, last question for you, Kathy. When you walk through this park and it's just an especially pleasant, agreeable, nice day, what are the thoughts or emotions that course through you as you go through this park that you've known for well over 40 years personally?
Mm-hmm. This park is a place of serenity when it's quiet. It's very peaceful. I've seen people just come and sit on the benches and read books or have picnics on the grounds. It's a great place to just be and enjoy nature.
The Julius Sturgis Pretzel Bakery takes credit for being the first commercial pretzel bakery in America. So it stands to reason that the Sturgis family is the oldest pretzel baking family in America. Now, when you visit here, they'll give you a lesson in pretzel twisting. Now, be prepared, it is a mere simulation. Now, that means they'll have you do it with a substance that is similar to Play-Doh. Don't eat the Play-Doh. I know some of you did that when you were kids.
Julius Sturgis came up with the idea of the hard pretzels. How he came up with the idea with the hard pretzels was he was an apprentice uptown, and they did soft pretzels with the leftover dough at the end of the day. And one night they were lazy, didn't pull them out, and the ovens went cooled down, but yet there was enough heat to get the moisture out of the soft pretzels. Julius tasted them the next morning when they were cleaning them out. He thought, tasted them and he thought, they taste pretty good. So then he started to work on it by himself on his own time to make them thinner and so that they would be crispier. And he talked to Amos Roush, who was the owner of the bakery up there, and he said, I think I have a good idea here for a pretzel. And they're crispy, they'll last longer. And he said, nah, that's not a good idea. Well, Julius said, I think it's a good idea. So he came down and bought this house. He bought the house and added a bakery here in 1861. And that's when the commercial pretzel business began. When you bake the pretzels, they go up to 550 degrees. And at the time, they used either coal, coke, wood, whatever, I'm sure whatever was the cheapest fuel to fuel the ovens. They used to come in the middle of the night to start baking at like 2 or 3 in the morning so that they could end up by lunchtime because it got too darn hot in here. The ovens were an addition to the building up front. The building up front was in 1784 or 5. We have a lot of older buildings in Lititz, and this was part of the Moravian community, if you would.
Now, being the mayor and owner of a pretzel bakery, I figure it has to have some kind of advantages, public relations-wise.
As being a mayor, my job is basically public relations and, and promoting the town. And so what better thing to do than promote my business here and promote the town?
Are you ever in the middle of a meeting with staff and you're working on maybe an ordinance and then maybe somebody pipes up and says, oh, we ought to get one of your pretzels?
No, we're pretty focused on what we have to do at those meetings. But we always do have pretzels around. Okay, Larry, right now we're going to teach you how to fold a pretzel in the pretzel shape. So first take your dough, which is Play-Doh, which is made from flour and water, and roll it out to about the same size as that dowel that's in front of you.
How many times do you figure you've done this, Mayor? Because you are fast.
I've done it quite a bit. And you just take your hands and move them out to the side, and that'll make the dough longer. Okay, so now there's different steps to the pretzel, and there's a significance to each step. Take your dough and put it in the shape of a U. Back in 1610, when the monks developed the pretzels, they did it to basically bribe their students to learn their prayers. So what they did is they made these soft pretzels for them that were, at that time, a sweet dough that they ate, and so they made them in the form of a pretzel shape. Now in those days, the kids used to say their prayers and put their arms like this. And the first thing is, when you put it like this is your prayers are going up to heaven. Next, you take it and just put it across like that up towards the top. Then just twist it. That's your pretzel knot. And did you ever hear tying the knot in the marriage ceremony?
Sure.
Well, here's where you get tying the knot. Then all you do is bring it back and put it there, and there you have your pretzel.
Not bad for an amateur.
Yeah, now there is a significance to this also. As you see, there's 3 holes there. And since the monks, is religious, they had this signified the Trinity. Father, Son, Holy Ghost.